All right, welcome everyone. So this is it's great to have you. This is our information session for our new funding opportunities to develop UC Santa Cruz innovations. I'm Ryan Sharp. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Business Engagement, and I lead our Innovation and Business Engagement Hub. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Sue Grosso, who's our Innovation Programs Manager and is helping us to advance many of our programmatic opportunities available through the hub. For those of you not familiar with the hub, we really serve as the point of entry for industry partners, investors, and entrepreneurs to connect with UC Santa Cruz's discoveries, innovations, resources, and talents. And as part of our new venture development unit, we manage a suite of innovation and entrepreneurship programs, including the two that we'll be discussing here today, the Innovation Catalyst Grant and the Climate Action Solutions Incubator Program. So we're going to start with the Innovation Catalyst Grant. And before I jump into going over the details for all of our programs, I wanted to remind everybody that there will be a lot more information available within the request for proposal document for the Innovation Catalyst Grant, and the program overview document for the Climate Action Solutions Incubator Program. So please be sure to refer to those for the full details available on the programs. So the Innovation Catalyst Grant is meant to be a proof of concept program that really focuses on providing gap funding, training, mentorship, and support to really help de-risk and validate early stage technologies being developed at the university. We want to provide this funding to help position the innovations to move out of the university and in the long term catalyze the process for transformative change and societal impact. For those of you who were familiar with this program from our previous cycle, it's important to note that for this particular cycle, we have a special Climate Action Solutions track that's focused on technology innovations that are meant to address some of California's most pressing climate challenges. The Innovation Catalyst Grant is really designed to be a gap funding program, recognizing the long-standing gap in the innovation capital landscape between basic research and the ability to attract early stage investment capital and everything that's necessary between those two realms to de-risk and validate the technology and get it positioned to move out of the university. The entirety of the program recognizes that early stage technologies need resources for technology development at the front end, and then through the de-risking and validation cycle also need to be able to come out of that back end with a clear understanding of customers. And so our program, through both the funding mechanisms and the capacity building elements that are part of it, are designed to help our researchers accomplish those objectives. So the Innovation Catalyst Grant provides each awardee with up to $50,000 for direct costs. We anticipate that programs will be no longer than up to 12 months for a specific project. For this cycle, we have $300,000 available through the program. $100,000 of that $300,000 will be for our core program, general technology areas, and then $200,000 will be targeted to our Climate Action Solutions track. In order to be eligible to participate in the program, you have to be an employee of UC Santa Cruz with principal investigator status, and your projects have to really focus on a technology innovation that is really well beyond the basic research stage, has kind of established the case for that technology innovation. We are conscious in making sure that the technology innovations that are being developed through the program have no existing intellectual property obligations, meaning they haven't been licensed to an external entity who is responsible for commercialization of those technologies. They still need to be internal to the university. And they're at a stage where we really need to be doing some really important de-risking and validation milestones to demonstrate the implementation, adoption, and commercial feasibility of the project. Because these are meant to be gap funding focused. We want to make sure that the projects that are funded through the Innovation Catalyst Grant are functionally distinct from other funded projects or other funding that the technology may have previously received or is currently ongoing. We want to make sure that there's no overlap and that it's really addressing that gap in the funding ecosystem. The grant cycle launched on December 1, and we have a proposal submission deadline of January 12, so a couple of weeks after the holiday period will be the proposal submission deadline. We'll go through the review process and anticipate that we'll be notifying awardees around the end of March, probably around March 28th if our timeline sticks. And then as we allocate the funding and get the projects rolling, the 12-month project period would be roughly between April 2024 and March 2025. So as we're thinking about what's involved with de-risking and validation of early stage technology innovations, I've listed here on the slide a few types of activities that one may be able to fund with an Innovation Catalyst Grant. But really this is focused on those white-hot risks for the technology and addressing those through experiments or validation that really helps to drive that technology forward. So that could include everything from prototyping to analytical and testing services, small-scale animal model research if you're working in the life sciences, and even community engagement efforts to really understand the implementation and adoption of the solution. As I mentioned, awards are available for up to $50,000 of direct costs. And as you probably saw from the types of activities that we anticipate being supported by the project, we really do expect that our awardees may be directing the resources to access external equipment, secure technical services, contract services that are necessary to de-risk and validate those technologies. We have a salary support cap associated with the Innovation Catalyst Grant. We really want to be making sure that this is effectively utilizing the funding to address the important de-risking and validation milestones and not geared toward continued basic research work at the institution. But we also recognize that there will be salary support that is often needed within the budgets of these projects to ensure that they're moving forward effectively. So in general, we have a cap of no more than 20% of the requested budget for salary support, but we also recognize that software development associated with projects can be different. And so an exception to this 20% cap is for projects where software development is integral to the proof of concept work. We're allowing that cap to be extended to up to 40% of the total requested budget, or if you're not requesting the total of the $50,000, up to a total of $20,000 can be allocated for salary support to do software development work. The proposal consists of basically 5 main sections plus some attachments. It starts with a description of the innovation, where you're really trying to describe the basis for the innovation, including the real-world problem and market need for that innovation and how your innovation helps address that problem. We'll want you to talk about what progress has been made to date on that innovation to establish, the way that it can address those market needs. And then talk about how the project, if the proof of concept is established through the Innovation Catalyst Grant, can be moving forward into next steps and future work with proof of concept established. The second section is about advancement and adoption, where you'd be asked to describe what the necessary de-risking and validation steps are that are needed to move the technology forward. And what are some of the technical and commercial hurdles that you've faced in terms of advancing the technology that can be overcome through some of the work that you anticipate doing through the proof of concept program. Specifically for the climate action solutions track, we would also want you to discuss what type of anticipated community engagement would be needed to facilitate the implementation of the solution, and really to think about how implementation of the solution can help ensure that local California communities are prepared and resilient. The third section of the proposal is the project plan, basically a statement of work detailing your tasks and activities and experiments. This is where you would talk about, what you anticipate doing through the project. Some of the example types of activities that I showed on the previous slide could be things that you discuss. And really think about how this project builds on your previous work and other funded work to advance the implementation and adoption. The fourth section is the budget summary and justification. This is a simple section if you aren't requesting salary support. Basically, it's a budget summary and justification in general, detailing how you would anticipate using the funds for the types of eligible expenses described in the request for proposal document. If you are requesting salary support, we do require that you provide a detailed budget through the detailed budget builder available through the Office of Research, also linked within the request for proposals document. And so that would be an attachment that I'll refer to later. And then, finally, the last section is the milestones and outcomes. And really, we want you to detail out your project schedule, the key project milestones that would be completed, and then really think about how those milestones are advancing the technology innovation, and how, if we were able to complete the proof of concept work successfully, that technology can be more attractive for licensing to a company, enabling the formation of a new startup company, or another commercialization pathway within a 1 to 2 year period of project completion. As part of this, we would expect you to describe your anticipated outcomes associated with the proof of concept work. Those could be anything from having a successful working prototype, developing that integrated software, demonstrating commercial and scale-up feasibility, or even producing results that will allow you to receive additional innovation funding, for example, through a small business innovation research grant. In terms of the attachments, I mentioned before that if you are requesting salary or support, we're asking that you attach a detailed budget spreadsheet. For all proposals, though, we'd like a bio sketch of the principal investigator associated with it. We're not asking for anything special here. You can submit standard format bio sketches that you'll use for NSF, NIH, or others, or a simple bio if you want to create something from scratch for this particular project. Our selection process really leans on our external selection committee, which consists of industry R&D leaders and technology scouts, professional investors, technology consultants, and experienced entrepreneurs, all with relevant subject matter expertise across the research disciplines that are covered by the proposals that we receive. The selection committee will look at the proposals using a scoring rubric that focuses on 3 main areas: program fit, innovation and technical merit, and proof of concept milestones. Basically, in terms of program fit, we're really making sure that the project that you're proposing and the technology that's the subject of that project is at the right stage for proof of concept funding. The innovation and technical merit is really looking at how unique or novel the innovation is and what potential it has to address the real world problem and market need that you described in the proposal, and how in the long term it can lead to transformative change or societal impact. Specifically for the climate action solutions track, the reviewers will also be asked to think about how the solution addresses one or more of California's most pressing climate challenges. In terms of proof of concept project milestones, be really looking at that the proposal reflects a clear understanding of the steps and challenges and value generating milestones that are necessary to de-risk and validate that technology, and how likely it is that the project that you're proposing can really be completed within the budget and timeline that's being proposed and generate the types of results that are necessary to establish proof of concept. For the climate action solutions track, the reviewers will also be asked to think about the community engagement needed to facilitate the implementation and adoption of the projects, and whether the proposal clearly reflects an understanding of that community engagement that's necessary. Overall, the selection committee will make recommendations that will be reviewed by the Vice Chancellor for Research, and the Vice Chancellor for Research will make the selection of the awardees. We think that this program has so many other benefits beyond just the funding that it's providing and the ability to accomplish the de-risking and validation milestones. But one of them is that no matter if you receive funding or not, all of our proposals will receive consolidated written feedback from the reviewers that's really meant to help guide your future work on the innovation and inform future proposals for proof of concept funding or other innovation funding. When the project is awarded, all awardees will be assigned a liaison from the Innovation and Business Engagement Hub, but also one or more project mentors from the selection committee that will work with you throughout your project period to help really evaluate the findings and pivot as necessary as you're moving along in your proof of concept work. In fact, prior to receiving funding, awardees are required to meet with their mentors to review the project plan and budget and have a conversation about whether or not it is truly addressing the most value generating steps that are necessary to de-risk and validate the project. And if pivots are necessary at the front end to address one or two minor modifications to the scope of work or budget that ultimately results in a better project for proof of concept work, we allow that flexibility in consultation with the mentors. And during the project period, the awardees will meet with the mentors on a quarterly basis, providing updates, but also providing an opportunity to share early results and any challenges or new opportunities that are discovered through the proof of concept work, and work with the mentors to help assess what that means, potentially discuss pivots or changes that may be needed for the project as you're discovering new things through the proof of concept work. And being an innovation related project, we want this to pivot as necessary if you're learning something new through the project and it needs to adjust on the fly. And we can do that in collaboration with the mentors. As I mentioned early on, we want not only to think about how the funding can address these important de-risking and validation milestones, but also how the innovators that are working on these projects can better understand the implementation and adoption pathway by really getting a good understanding of their customers through customer discovery and validation work. So all team members of funded projects, if they haven't participated previously, will be required to participate in an NSF I-Corps Lean Launchpad immersive short course. We provide an opportunity for our awardees to participate as part of a UC Santa Cruz cohort that we host through the Innovation and Business Engagement Hub, or if unable to do so, can participate in one of the virtual short course offerings provided by the Bay Area I-Corps program. And then finally, at the end of the project, awardees will be required to submit a final report. And as we gather our selection committee together for the next Innovation Catalyst Grant cycle, we'll do a small symposium with short presentations where the previous awardees can really talk about what they learned from the project, both from the funding and experiments that they conducted utilizing the funding, but also through engaging with potential customers through the Lean Launchpad short course. in terms of the climate action solutions track, there are a couple other benefits and requirements. One is project teams will be required to participate in training and consultations with the Campus Plus community group that's really focused on enhancing meaningful and effective engagement with stakeholders and impacted communities, specifically to drive climate resilience and climate action and ensure that community engagement is an integral part of your projects, both now and moving forward into the future. And then project teams that are working on an innovation that's really closely aligned with ocean health or coastal climate resilience will also have access to some special venture development workshops that we're organizing in collaboration with the Sustainable Ocean Alliance that are really focused on what are some of the considerations and activities that are necessary to build a new startup venture focused on implementation and adoption of that solution. To give you a sense of the previous cycle and what has been previously awarded, you can see we had 2 awards from the last cycle for the Innovation Catalyst Grant. The first was focused on an incubator-free vessel for cell culture, led by co-PIs David Hausler and Mircea Todorescu. And the second project was focused on drug discovery for cardiac ischemia reperfusion injury, led by Ted Holman. Now I'll be transitioning to discuss our Climate Action Solutions Incubator Program, another one of our funding opportunities to develop innovations at the university. So this program actually has a slightly different focus than our Innovation Catalyst Grant, and that we're really trying to think about providing small-scale supplemental project funding alongside access to these capacity-building workshops and mentorship opportunities to help continue to advance action-oriented solutions for climate action that are being developed at the university and that are really focused on California's most pressing climate challenges. This really thinks about an action-oriented solution from several different perspectives. It can be a research project, it could be an innovation, it could be a new practice, a policy, or engagement. And we're really trying to think about how can we utilize the incubator program to not only provide this small-scale supplemental program, but also these capacity-building elements to advance that action-oriented solution alongside the work that's continually being conducted on that project to really get it to a point where we can help realize catalytic outcomes. As I mentioned, the funding for these projects is smaller scale. Each selected project will be awarded up to $10,000 in the supplemental funding. We are accepting applications on a rolling basis for this particular project and have $50,000 of funding available. So whenever we receive, good projects that get us to that point, we'll cease the program from the funding opportunity perspective. So please, if this is something you're interested in, the sooner the better to apply for the funding. The projects that are the focus of the incubator program can be led by faculty, staff, or students. But it's important to note that only projects that have received previous funding and have completed enough work to establish there's a basis for an action-oriented solution will be considered for this. These can't be brand new ideas. They really need to have a basis in previously funded work to demonstrate that this solution has the potential to make an impact. The use of funds are very specific here, and we only have 3 areas where funds can be used for the incubator project. One is customer discovery and validation. How can you get outside of the university and go talk to your potential customers to learn about what they will need in order to realize implementation and adoption of the solution that you're proposing? The customer discovery and validation funding can be used for accessing information about potential customers, so you can do outreach, doing domestic travel, so you can go meet with potential customers, attending industry conferences, again, so you can meet with groups of industry of customers. And so really that's allowing you that additional opportunity to get out of the university and go visit and talk to and learn about your customers. The second use of funds is for community and stakeholder engagement. This can be used to provide support to a partner that you're working with that's assisting with important community engagement efforts associated with your project. Can be used to fund meetings that you want to host focused on stakeholder engagement. Can be used for surveys or other input methods, but providing you an opportunity to engage with the communities and really understand what's necessary to ensure that the impacted communities in the state are being considered as part of the projects. And then finally, very limited research and development. This is significantly different than the type of work that would be funded through the Innovation Catalyst Grant Program, and that if you have the need to do some limited prototyping or coding, or even develop a demo to take with you when you go do your customer discovery and validation work, this is a very limited research and development, not meant to be generating new elements of your innovation, not meant to be generating intellectual property as part of this project. It's really just meant for small scale, limited research and development work as necessary to move your projects forward. The application for the incubator program only consists of 3 main sections. The applicant information will be asking you about yourself. We'll be asking you to provide some references that can speak to the qualifications and project and the progress on your project. And then we'll also want to know a little bit about why you're interested in participating in the project and what you hope to get out of this particular program. The solution summary is pretty self-explanatory. We want you to talk about your solution and how prior funding has established the basis for that solution, really how your solution aligns with addressing some of the state's most pressing climate challenges, and an overview of what you anticipate for the community engagement that's needed to facilitate implementation of the solution. And then the funding plan would include a simple budget summary and justification, along with the timeline and an explanation of key milestones and how those milestones will advance the solution, both building on the previous funding that you'd received, but also informing future work that you may be doing on the solution. The selection process here is really driven by the Innovation and Business Engagement Hub team, where we will be assessing the projects that are proposed from 4 main perspectives. And then as we identify projects that score well across the 4 main elements, we'll be advancing those to the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research for Strategic Initiatives, who will be providing final approval for the projects. We'll be looking for program fit. How closely does the project align with the intentions and objectives of the program? The solution and technical merit, how well established is the solution, and really does it have the potential to address the state's most pressing climate challenges? Community engagement, again, similar to the climate action track of our Innovation Catalyst Grant Program, a clear recognition of the community engagement that's needed to facilitate the implementation of the solution. And then finally, does the funding plan meaningfully advance the implementation and adoption potential of the project within a reasonable time frame? Like our other programs, this, in addition to the funding itself, also has some capacity building elements that are really beneficial for the teams. Project teams here will also receive the training and consultation from Campus Plus Community focused on community engagements. We'll also provide access to a network of technical mentors that are both part of our network at the Innovation and Business Engagement Hub, but also part of our external innovation program partners, including the Sustainable Ocean Alliance Network, where we can call on those mentors to help provide guidance and advice on those projects as needed. The teams will also have access to the same Lean Launchpad and venture development workshops that I mentioned that were integrated into Innovation Catalyst Grant general program, as well as the Climate Action Solutions track. And then we'll ask awardees to provide a short report summarizing the outcomes of their work once the work is completed. So if you're interested in applying, I wanted to provide you a quick just reminder and overview of the two programs. From a focus perspective, the Innovation Catalyst Grant is really focused on technology innovations, both generally through our core program and then through our Climate Action Solutions track. The Climate Action Solutions Incubator has a broader focus for research, innovation, policy, practice, and engagement that are driving climate action solutions. From a funding perspective, the Innovation Catalyst Grant really addresses gap funding focused on proof of concept work up to $50,000 to de-risk and validate technologies. Whereas the Climate Action Solutions Incubator program is small-scale supplemental funding, only up to $10,000, and that $10,000 can be directed toward customer discovery, community engagement, or very limited research and development activities. And if you want to find out more, including accessing the InfoReady site for applying for the Innovation Catalyst Grant, or our form for applying for the Climate Action Solutions Incubator program, you can go to the links there at the bottom of the page, where you can learn more, access the full RFP and program overview documents that have several other important details that are important to review before applying. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email us at the email address there on the bottom of the slide.